Hello, everybody, and welcome to Reviews from Hell, the new review page for Infamous Horrors. I am your host, AJ, and I am joined today by my co-host, Steve.
Howdy.
We used to co-host a podcast called What to Discuss Now, but we made the move to Infamous Horrors. And today, for our first episode, we are going to review Scream 2022. So, Steve, you kind of grew up with this franchise more than I did because I was rather young when it first came out.
Because I'm old. You can just say it because I'm old. Yeah. No, I did. And like I just said before we started, we could talk Scream all day if you had the desire. But I did. So the new one, you're going into it, and there's a mixture of excitement and a little bit of caution because, and I don't want to really say caution, but I think it's fair because the creative team that handled the majority of this franchise, Wes is no longer here and Kevin isn't writing this one, which I know he didn't write 3, but that he created this story and wrote a lot of it, wrote most of it, and the best entries. But I wasn't that worried because for those that don't know, it's made by a filmmaking collective. The new Scream, people want to call it Scream 5, whatever, but it's just Scream 22. Yeah. Scream 22. The guys behind it are Radio Silence that directed and produced it. And if anybody
also did the excellent Ready or Not when that came out.
They did. And that was the movie that I thought really made me think that they could do this well, because that movie had it was kind of biting satire. It had great bloody kills, and
the ending was what WTF when it happened. I was
right. It's
I kind of saw it happening, but then when it happened, I was like,
yeah, people actually combusting on screen, and it does this great. You're kind of laughing, and you're also kind of horrified, which. That's what we want for Scream. We want people to take it seriously. And yes, the kills are real and it's scary, but we want those jokes. We want that self-awareness. It's not necessarily a straight slasher. So those guys are good for that. And if you look back at their catalog, I haven't seen Devil's Due. That one missed me. But Southbound,
I don't think I've seen that either.
It got good reviews, but I was unaware. I somehow missed it. I'll have to check it out. But they have made a few things. They created, co-created, and came up with the VHS and had that first. In the first VHS, they directed that segment to, I think it was called like 10/31. It was a date of Halloween. And so there's that. Then they did the movie Southbound, which was
really? Okay,
isn't that awesome? Yeah, I think
I remember that playing at a mall at Concord Mills, actually, when that came out.
You got to see that on the big screen?
I did not, because I had no clue who was in it. I was not a fan of anthology movies at the time because I felt
they can be all over the place. Yeah, they can be all over the place.
From anthology films, so I was like, I can easily pass on this one.
Yeah, and I barely remember just like the title, and I never saw it. Don't remember seeing a trailer when it came out. I saw it in the past year. Just one of those nights I put Shudder TV on and was just like, I don't want to pick, you pick Shudder, and it came on. I watched it. It's so good. I have to recommend that. I think that is the most. The VHS concept is so badass and fun, and we've got so much fun stuff. But in terms of like a full length. Kind of feature, Southbound, I think is just a really cool concept. It's so awesome. So if you haven't seen that, it may still be on Shudder. I'm sure it's probably streaming somewhere. Check that out. But for Scream in 2022, obviously, I wouldn't have wanted a remake. I would not have been interested in just a straight remake of Scream. I kind of find that to be boring in the idea of itself.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah,
a young Sydney and get somebody else to pretend to play David Arquette playing Dewey, just all that kind of, and you'd be getting just bad Courtney Cox.
It would be more like Scary Movie than it
would. Yeah,
was.
You would be getting bad Courtney Cox impersonations and stuff like that. And it would be so meta, it would make my head hurt because you have the Stab in Universe films, in RU World, we have the Scary Movie.
And recording like it would get like somebody like Tracy Lords as Courtney Cox now.
Who knows what they would do? Who knows? But this is a much better idea. when I think of what this is, they try to sell the term requel in the new Scream movie as to how to describe this, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I like that or not. I know it's easier to say that than to just say legacy sequel, but I kind of go with legacy sequel. And for anybody that just so we can say somebody going, what? A legacy sequel, specifically, you can think Halloween 2018, where some of these long-running franchises, the timeline may get so convoluted that what we do is we go back to the source and we make a sequel, a long-awaited sequel to that, where we have old cast members and new. And in that, we do kind of have some remake elements as we kind of want to recreate the feeling or whatever of the original. Okay. And, I was trying to think of when the first time that was in my mind, and I kind of think because that is overtaking the straight remake. Now instead of
now you're hearing spiritual sequels to a
spiritual sequel. Yeah. That's the same thing. Legacy sequel.
And that's kind of why I got annoyed with Candyman, because
and that's
it was just trying to force the sequel part too much. Like if it was on its own, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more than I did.
I understand that. With me, with Candyman, not to go back down that rabbit hole, but the Candyman thing for me was I felt that there was a lot of really cool kind of smaller like vignettes almost or sequences, but it just was so choppy. I didn't think it really.
Yeah, like it almost felt more like an anthology Candyman.
It did. It didn't really. And there's a cool idea actually to do a Candyman kind of urban legend kind of anthology. Ooh, but anyway, so the Scream. So that's what it is. It is a legacy sequel in that it doesn't rewrite anything. You have the main cast of your trio. You got Neve Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox all coming back, but in smaller capacity roles. Like we go back to Woodsboro, and everything from the characters who have or are related to, say, older cast members that may have died in the other films, everything is a continuation, and it lives very much in the original film's world, but it's not a remake, And I do think that's an interesting idea, but I am afraid that we are going to get to a point really, really soon, because we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre doing this as well coming up, which I'm excited for it. But you get one thing going, like we had to have 8 million remakes until we beat that horse dead. And now I'm just afraid, is everything, what I mean? Everything going to do this to where we have
spiritual sequels as the new remake.
It is. Yeah. It very much is. So, but that being said, it's not like we've beat that horse dead yet or anything. Oh, what I was going to say, the first time I do remember that, and stop me if I'm wrong, but the first kind of this idea playing out isn't a horror movie. I kind of feel like it was The Force Awakens. I kind of feel like the first time, and I don't feel like there was a word for that yet when JJ was doing.
When Tarantino was doing his supposed Django Unchained universe thing, he was saying like Inglourious Bastards was a part of it, and The Hateful Eight was also.
Oh no, I didn't know that. That makes sense.
I think I remember that correctly. If not, then I apologize.
And those movies still definitely. I think most of Tarantino's stuff takes place in one universe now. But those movies, that era of his career, definitely has. Those 3 films do have a similar kind of feel to them in the way that they look, and kind of they have very similar kind of pulpy aspects that are. I felt those movies were a little bit more fantastical and comic booky than, say, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, and his earlier stuff. Which I'm not saying it's bad, but they do. That doesn't make sense to me. I've never heard that, but just that those movies all kind of do have a similar tone. It doesn't seem far-fetched to think they'd be in the same world. Okay, so with Scream 22, you have that legacy sequel set up, and you have your stars coming back. But what we're really focusing on here is an entire new generation who gets the majority of the screen time. In Scream. Now they may have connections to, like I said, like you have Randy Meeks, Jamie Kennedy's character. His niece and nephew are big characters in this film. It's the girl who plays Taissa from Yellow Jackets is his niece. I did recognize her. And the one that plays Randy Meeks' nephew is Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son. And I did not know that going in watching the movie. The guy that wears the Woodsboro Letterman jacket, I think his name's Chad. That's Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son. I thought that was cool. But anyway, so I thought this movie really worked. I thought it really.
I did too. Yeah.
I wasn't okay. Now I wasn't that surprised by anything. It kind of knowing Radio Silence, seeing Ready or Not, and just being savvy about what it is as a legacy sequel going in. It pretty much it checks a lot of boxes in entertainment value and things like that. My girlfriend nabbed who the killers were pretty quickly on. I did not. I wasn't really trying to at the same time.
I wasn't really trying to. I was just trying to enjoy the movie at the same time.
Yeah, I get wrapped up. Yeah, I really don't try to figure it out, but I had to give it to her. She nailed it pretty early on. And
if you've seen the old Scream movies, then you know who the killer is going to be pretty early on.
Yeah. If we're doing a legacy thing, it makes sense that it's always. And this is going to be spoilery, but go see the movie.
It's been almost like 3 weeks?
It's been about a month, and I know it's going to be on Paramount Plus in a couple of weeks for people that don't feel comfortable with the theater, but it's been out. I feel safe talking about it. So the killer reveal, one of the movie. Oh, and they did have a really cool. Radio Silence had a really cool way of paying homage to legacy cast member Skeet Ulrich. I thought.
That was really cool, I thought.
What a really fun way to bring him back. And he looks awesome. He looks great. I know they did DH him a little bit, but they even said even before they used the de-aging technology on him, they thought, wow, we don't need to, jokingly, because he looked so good and convincing. I mean, he's a handsome man. I remember he had a heartthrobby kind of following in the 90s and probably more recently he kind of had that intense Johnny Depp, younger Johnny Depp kind of appeal to Steve. Yeah. But that probably, I would say, is his most memorable role. I know that he and Nev that same year did Scream and The Craft together, which I think is pretty cool when you look back on that those came out the same year. But it brings him back in an interesting way. One of the main cast members, Samantha, Sam Carpenter is her name.
And this is the thing that irritates me about people complaining about how meta this movie is. Did we forget about Scream when there was a janitor named Frederick?
Yeah, or in the first one. Yeah.
And he had a Freddy Krueger sweater on. Yeah. He's like mopping the halls. Henry Winkler's like, not you, Fred. He's like, hey, you talking to me? Yeah, and even her name as Sam Carpenter, the girl who turns out who sees Skeet Ulrich in visions and sees Billy Loomis. Which is obviously a callback to Dr. Loomis as well.
That was a call. It's Sam Loomis that's a callback, and I also think that Sam Loomis is a character in Psycho as well, which Donald Pleasance was John Carpenter doing a callback to Psycho. So it just keeps going. And I think that and even in this one, in calling her Sam Carpenter on the first one, there is a scene in the original Scream where Neve Campbell and Rose McGowan are talking on the porch, and Rose McGowan's character says, "You're starting to sound like one of those Wes Carpenter flicks." And so they've done this kind of thing before. And so I definitely, and that's what kind of, this film is dedicated to Wes, and that was one of Kevin's requirements. Because Kevin Williamson speaking, there's even legacy behind it's a legacy sequel behind the camera as well, because Kevin Williamson didn't write it, but he was very, very much according
involved,
to him, involved. They wanted him involved, and he thought about it, and he kind of came around to it, and he said his big thing was it has to be for Wes, and it is. It says for Wes, and it's of course very appropriate. But it doesn't feel like I know it's in part meant to make money, but it does not feel like a cash grab the way some remakes eventually started to feel like was, just another cash grab, And
I loved how they talked about that in the movie too.
They do talk about that, and you get interesting stuff where, you get really self-aware stuff like that with these legacy sequels, like, because we just had a Matrix one, which that was a much more divisive film than this new Scream movie. And it did kind of the same thing where they're talking about how, we don't want another soulless cash grab. And then another guy goes, why not? Those make money. And they do. People love nostalgia. I mean, people, I don't care how anybody feels about either Ghostbusters film. I kind of think all Ghostbusters is pretty fun on one level or another. But the 2016 deviated too much from what some contingent of fans thought was what Ghostbusters should be, and they got crucified. And then another group of fans for the new one thought it leaned too heavily into the past, and they got crucified. So it's like, you're going to please all these people. Just make
like the Notebook, right? Like, what do you want?
Yeah, just make the movie you want to make. It doesn't matter. You can't, when you try to and anytime you go out of your way to try to please people, I think it kind of shows, and we all kind of go, but it is strange. People will complain about nostalgia. It's become such a buzzword in things they don't like, and then they'll go cry at the new Spider-Man movie, which seems to be like nostalgia, an exercise in nostalgia itself. So with the
then they'll complain that didn't get a Best Picture nomination too.
That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. I respect. Kevin Smith seems like a good guy. I loved some of his. Mallrats was a big movie for me. Dogma. I loved a lot of his films and stuff.
I mean, I'm like Kevin Smith as a filmmaker.
You're a bigger Kevin Smith fan than me. But I gotta say, look.
But now his podcast and stuff he does on YouTube is more like a character. I mean, I don't even listen to him anymore.
Well, sometimes you get around long enough, you get caught in this kind of beat of what people kind of see you as. And I'm not saying he's done it, but it's possible. But look, how long can we still pretend that comic book movies are some kind of underdog? These movies are made by the Walt Disney Company for the most part. Okay, they control over half of the entertainment you see. Period. Okay. Black Panther was nominated. The Dark Knight had multiple nominations and a Best Actor win that was in 15 years ago. And also in that universe, Black Panther was nominated. Chadwick Boseman was nominated. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse won a big Best
Animated Picture. So,
you're not the underdog just because one movie didn't get nominated. And I really like Spider-Man. I'm not here to say whether or not it should be nominated, but there's a lot of movies I saw that much more than Spider-Man last year that didn't get a single nomination, and that's fine. Like, it's just the Oscars, guys. Like The Green Knight not getting some kind of cinematography.
That was crazy to me that Dave Patel didn't get any nominations too.
Oh, exactly. He was fantastic. And how about the fact that Dune, how you cannot explain to me, Ben Affleck probably should call Denis Villeneuve and just be like, I feel your pain. When Dune gets nominated because of Argo, Dune gets nominated.
I was going to say it's the Argo effect. Yeah.
10, but you can't get 10 and then not get nominated for Best Director. It's just foolish. And so.
And you know what? I think I was talking to somebody on Facebook, like, the Oscars have become more of a caricature of themselves as well, especially after them allowing sometimes 10 pictures to be nominated, and then they don't even nominate 10 some years.
Yeah, it's so stupid. They did that because there was a conversation around 2008, 2009, where they said, hey, there needs to be more fantasy, sci-fi, horror. There needs to be more genre allowed in. They obviously, at the Academy, don't like horror for one, but they also don't like genre.
I remember the huge Get Out backlash, and a lot of voters were like, "This is not an Oscar movie."
It's crazy to say that. It's crazy to say that because that was probably the best movie I saw that year. Period. And a lot of people felt that way. I just think that with I don't know exactly who's on the Oscar board, but I imagine it to be very old. Very kind of stuffy, and I just feel that, just get over. Did you shut the? It's nice to be nominated. I watch the Oscars. I try to pay attention, but it's not the end all be all of what makes something a good movie. And a lot of times the winners are forgotten in a couple years anyway. Like, what do people really want to watch? Goodfellas or Dances with Wolves? You'd be shocked to find out that Dances with Wolves beat Goodfellas for the Oscar that year. Or how about Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction? What's the cooler movie? Pulp Fiction. The Academy did not agree. It's always been that way. But, okay, sorry. Bring it back to Scream. So you still got Roger Jackson too as Ghostface, which that to me would be a big thing if you didn't have Roger Jackson. I can't imagine these movies going on. He is the voice of your monster, and he is really to me what kind of carries the fear through it all. And so I think it. Now, in terms of the rules that they're talking about in this one, I don't really remember them, and I don't really remember. The only time that the rules were really cool was 1 and 2, I felt like.
Yeah, that's the one where they were really forced on you, and like you had
that's really cool. And in 2, that whole scene with Dewey and Randy talking about that's great. That was the teaser trailer when 2 came out, I remember. Was them in that scene talking when they're over those milkshakes in part 2 or whatever. So that's cool. But the new stuff, it also feels to me a little bit forced when other people start talking like Randy Meeks. Like, why is there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like the female who was watching Stabbed all the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so, and there did seem to be an ending to me, the killer reveal in this one. Look, I'll just go ahead and say it. It is kind of confusing to me that the girl that played Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and gets flamethrowered, that the very next thing that you really see her in of note that I have, she gets set on fire again in a very similar. It was just, I thought that was weird. That was the thing
that's in our contracts, you know.
Yeah, that was right. That was one of the things where I was just like, well, that's odd. And so I don't exactly know about that. So, but that's neither here nor there. I like what they did. You know, I do appreciate a lot of people say things like, well, they should never kill off Sydney, or they should never kill off Dewey. They should never kill off any of these legacy characters. And I'm like, I
kind of disagree with that, because at least some point you got to get underneath their shadow at some point.
Yeah, and at some point you got to kill some people that matter until it gets stale again. And you, like in The Walking Dead, in the first couple seasons, when you really felt like anyone could die, you're always like this, you know, oh God, you know. But then after a while, you realize, okay, well, he's not going to die. Nothing is suspenseful anymore. So, and I thought that how they used Gale and Sydney in this movie. A little bit too little, I thought. I get that I can't have everything I want, and I've seen a lot of these characters over the years, but just a little bit more, especially if Gale and Sydney would have been nice, a little bit more. They did feel a little tacked on to where I questioned, did we
really need those two? Yeah.
Yeah, but Dewey, what they did with Dewey was awesome.
Was pretty cool.
I love that. And I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, no, but look what they did to him. I was like, I don't know. I was like,
I kind of enjoyed that scene. I thought it was one of the best kills of the movie.
He's had an actual arc. That character in each film progresses and changes to where by the time you get to 4, he's the sheriff and he's running Woodsboro. But, you know, although now he's stepped down and his life is in shambles and he's divorced and he and Gail didn't work out, and so you get this stuff that feels real. It feels like, oh, this is an old friend that has actually went through some stuff, and I've been through some stuff since last time I saw him, so I can relate. And
and it's like the Gail and Sydney thing has just, they have not evolved their art.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of character development for Sid in the other movies, where she finally eventually gets to write the book and everything. But in this one, there's just not that much of them. And I think that it's just kind of a thing where, and it's not a big deal. It didn't, I loved the movie, but it's to a point where you can only have so much of one thing.
I'm just waiting until the Snyder cut comes out and we can have 4 hours.
Right, 4 hours of Scream. Now, I think these movies this movie felt right, like the clock in, the runtime. Movie like it flows really
in
well
with the others, because if you remember, the others was like an hour and 50, an hour and 47. Yeah, this one was right at 2 hours. So.
And that time length, when you see that sometimes for a slasher, you think, 2 hours. I don't want it to drag. Right. What some people feel. I will say this: it's amazing to me when I go back and watch the first one. After that, classic Drew Barrymore opening 10 minutes. There is a long time.
That was so ballsy at the time, having somebody like Drew Barrymore and killing her off in the first sequence.
Yeah, it was Psycho all over again with Janet Leigh. You know, it was great. You know, taking like a Hitchcock blonde looking, who people knew. You know, people definitely knew Drew Barrymore well by that point. And no, you just killed her. So and I also want to say that when I think of those iconic opening, you know, well, the first two have iconic opening scenes that were genre defining. That Scream 2 opening is, to me, just as equally fucking great as that first one. Almost. It's just like almost, you know, because the first, and that's like knocking it because the first one's so good. But that second one.
That was Omar Epps in there, right?
Omar Epps and Jada
And he was cool in that opening scene.
Oh, my God. Oh, it's so ahead of its time. You have black people talking about kind of the you have black people talking black people stuff in a big horror movie at the beginning, talking about their place in the genre. And this is 2 decades before horror noir, and the people were really talking about this stuff on a mainstream level. And so you have that, and then you also have just this amazing set piece of the theater on the premiere night with all the people in the Ghostface
that makes it really suspenseful too, right?
Yes.
All those people in the ghost mask.
I want to put my hand over my mouth when she shrieks, when she's like dying and she shrieks in front of everybody. It's harrowing. It's scary stuff. And I think that one really, and I remember seeing that.
And like, you can never see that in a movie now after what happened with The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, now
and there's been several.
So many people. Yeah,
there's been several shootings now. There was one just like last year. It's a
and there was even one in Trainwreck. I mean,
what did you say?
There was one in the Trainwreck movie with Bill Hader and Amy Schumer a few years back.
People just, you know, it's so awful. It's crazy to even think about to me. But I think but anyway, you could never have that today. You could not have that. You could not have that scene. So to see it, it's just wild. It's just crazy. And it speaks to their creative talents, is that how well Wes and Kevin both understood the franchise enough. It was one of those old sayings as writers or filmmakers or whatever, where it's learn the rules. You have to learn the rules and then you can break them, you know, and whether or not that's, you know, obviously not a blanket statement for everyone, but it very much comes from people that you feel like definitely know the rules of horror. I mean, they even put it in the movie, but they know the game and they're going to change the game, and they do it well. Scream was a game changer. There were always people screaming from the beginning, you know, oh, this isn't real horror or whatever. But it definitely came in. It seems to come in at a time when people were tying the toe tag of horror and saying horror was kind of dead. And I mean, it's hard to imagine now, as popular as horror is right now. But it does go the other way. And Scream was one of those kickstarts. And I think, and to me, it's just by the time Scream 4 came out 11 years ago, I love that movie. I'm glad it has been reappraised and it's kind of really just rediscovered, because I think when it came out, it was
kind of trashed. I think when it came out, right?
And more so, it was just kind of forgotten. It came and went. It didn't make very much money. The reviews were kind of to negative. And I really think it was ahead of its time in what it was talking about and the motive of the killer in terms of wanting instant internet fame. If that had come out a few years later, everyone would have got it. And I think it was ahead of its time. But I do think that at that time, people were just not scared of Ghostface anymore. There comes a point in a franchise when, you know, around the time that Freddy is cracking wise jokes all the time, or we've seen Jason so many times, it stops to be scary. And I think that Scream 4 just kind of came out and people were like, okay. Opposite reaction to this one. Since this one's been announced, people were super excited, and it's great. And there's a new one already greenlit. I hope they, keep it going. But the consistency, even 3, which has all kinds of problems, is not a great movie, but it's still really entertaining and still has some really cool Scooby-Doo stuff in it. There is a consistency in the Scream franchise that a lot of other franchises don't have. And it's crazy to me that across 5 movies, and now with a completely new creative team, you've still got such good quality, and it's just great to me. And when they're going to make a new one, I just I have faith in these people that they will bring it back around again. It's just wild to think that, because a lot of these franchises, it's pretty much known that expected that the first one's going to be great, and then the sequels are going to fall off. And Scream, it's definitely not the case. It's the rare example of a slasher franchise where it's pretty consistent throughout. It's pretty great.
And it's the main franchise, I think, too, that can start trilogies no matter what. You know what I'm saying? Like, this can lead to a brand new set of 3 films.
I think that's the idea, because they already it's made over $100 million. It did that a couple weeks ago, so I'm not sure where it's at now, but it's doing great. And they have greenlit. The studio has already greenlit the 6th film in the franchise.
Yeah, they did that rather quickly, I think.
Yes, they did. So we're gonna get at least one more, and you kind of got to think in their minds they got to have maybe a trilogy worked out. Now, I know 4 was supposed to be that. 4 was supposed to be Kevin Williams' start to a new trilogy, but it's just the time wasn't right. Like I said, it didn't get great reviews. It didn't make money. It's been reassessed and rediscovered now. It is one of those movies. Scream 4 Now's stock has went way up in the past 11 years since it came out, and that's awesome. But at the time, the Kevin's 5 and 6 Scream, we just won't know what they were. So that being said, I would give this movie I'd give it very high marks. I think that anything that it does lack just comes in the framework. I don't even know what it lacks, really. I think it's a pretty knockout time. I think that you're never going to be as original or inventive as the first film most of the time when you're a sequel. So there's that. But yeah, I kind of think it does most things right. I would give it. I
think it's a great bounce back for the franchise as well after 2 and 3. I mean, this is a great rebound. Yeah.
I think especially after 3, and I think the problem, because 2 was an enormously successful film, both critic-wise and money-making. And then 3 didn't make quite as much money, and it didn't get good reviews, which is fair because it's not as good. But then 4 was it was later, and it was just a weird time, and it was kind of ignored. So you're absolutely right that this is since 2, we're back up to, success on all fronts into making money and getting greenlit, and people seeming, audiences and critics, on the same page with really liking it. So yeah, I think it's a success. I would definitely give it something like a 8.5 or 9 out of 10 if I was doing like that, or like a 4 out of 5.
I think I'd agree with you. I think I'd probably give it closer to a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how fresh it feels, considering we're talking about a 25-year-old.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it sounds good, fresh. So yeah, definitely go check it out. It's still in theaters. Good date movie, Valentine's Day weekend.
Right. Forget the Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson movie. Go see Scream 2022.
Exactly.
All right. So the final rankings of Scream that you have, Steve, because we talked about this before the show.
Yeah.
So do you want to go ahead and go through yours?
I will. I'll do mine real quick. Up top in number 1 is going to be Scream 1996, the original, genre-defined, Wes Craven, Kevin Williamson, awesome masterpiece. What more could I add to Scream?
That kind of reinvigorated the whole slasher genre as well at the time. Yeah,
it brought back horror in a time when before Scream, no one was making horror films. And
they were talking about this with the Weinsteins back in the day when they selfed All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. They were like, we live in a time where, from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s, all the horror movies would be bombs at the box office. I mean, nobody wanted to see them. And so for Scream to come out at this time was a huge breath of fresh air to the genre.
It was a big turnaround, and it was, people started when I say they, I mean the major Hollywood studio system. Of course, indies never sleep. I'm talking about Hollywood was like, oh, wow, we can make. And so what followed was so many. There was I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, Valentine. There's so many of the slashers, and some were good, some were not so good. But okay, so Scream is my first. I think that my second favorite one, I'm going to go one. I'm going to go. Now I'm getting torn again. I'm going to go one. I'm going to go one. I'm going to go two. I'm going to go one. I'm going to go two. I'm going to go two. I'm going to go one. And then I'm going to do two. I think the first two, I think the second one is bloated and has some stuff that now
is very outdated now.
Yeah, there's some stuff in it that doesn't work as well now, but I do think there's enough great there to where at the time
and it has a really cool Timothy Olyphant performance.
Young Timothy Olyphant. Yeah, he was great. Mickey, the deranged film school student. But so I got one, I got two. Then I'm going to do the new one, and I'm putting it right in the middle. It's a fresh, innovative film, and it just is a shot in the arm that the franchise needed, and not necessarily that horror overall. It's not going to have that effect again because horror's in a different place now. But I think it's definitely the franchise restarter that they had to be
those epidermic pins or whatever you give the people. Yeah, that's what it felt like on the franchise.
Sure, and then I would put 4 behind that. I think 4 is really great, and I'm glad that people have come around to it a lot more. And I think that Emma Roberts as Jill, especially, is so awesome.
And that had Hayden Panettiere, right?
Yeah, as Kirby, who we know from this one, a little Easter egg, she did survive. There's a YouTube video when Jack Quaid is watching Stab 8 or something on 6 something on his computer. His up next video talks about her. It says survivor Kirby gives an interview in some way or another. So we do know so hopefully she comes back, because there was an Easter egg in the new one. We do have confirmation she survived. So I would put 4 there. It's not a slag against 4 to be that low in the rankings to be 4th. It's just a testament to how good the other 3 are that I've already mentioned. And bringing up the rear is Scream 3. I like Scream 3 to an extent, but there are some things about Scream 3 that are wonky and kind of stupid. For one, my biggest problem over anything else in Scream 3 is the voice changer, where he has that stupid voice changer that they never explain that somehow has every cast member that he needs in any given time's voice, as well as Ghostface voice. So there's all these instances of him calling people as Sidney and luring them to places, but it's stupid, and it's never, ever explained, and it's just a lazy piece of writing. So there are all kinds of problems with it. One of those, different. Kevin Williamson didn't write it, and so the tone with the characters is a little off, the way they interact. But it's still, there's some interesting things about it. It's really crazy how the Weinsteins made a movie about themselves and didn't realize it.
Right, like if you watch it now, you're like,
oh,
this
shit.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Why didn't this make it to the courtroom?
Yeah, exactly. It's like they were telling us everything about themselves. So, but I do think Scream 3 is definitely, I'm glad it wasn't a case of like ever ignoring it or writing it out, because I do think it's fine, and it isn't terrible, and it does have some great things about it. Parker Posey and Courtney Cox running around together is great, and it's got that awesome Carrie Fisher cameo, which is one of my favorite cameos in movie history. It's great. So I would go 1, 2, 5, 4, 3.
All right. So my rankings for the franchise would be, the first one would be number 1, of course.
Of course.
Followed by the new one, 2022.
Nice.
And then probably followed by 2.
Yep.
Then 4, then 3. That would be my rankings of the franchise.
Very close. I almost went there with it. But I didn't at the last second. But yeah, I think the new one is really, really strong.
Yeah, and so what are some of your favorite performances from the new one itself? Because I think Jack Quaid was surprisingly really cool in this one.
Jack Quaid was really cool. I was surprised.
For those who don't know, he is the son of Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. So if you did not know that, that's who that is that you're watching on the big screen.
And if you haven't seen him in the excellent series on Amazon Prime, The Boys, get on it before the new season comes out this year because it is awesome. I absolutely.
And I'm so looking forward to Jensen Ackles on the new season too.
That's right. You're going to get Jensen Ackles. So there you go. There's more reason to tune in. But Jack Quaid and I'm trying to think because honestly, I really liked. Now, I think this is David Arquette as Dewey at his best. I thought he was really cool.
I thought so too. Yeah, I thought this gave him the most work.
He's got an arc. Yeah. He has an arc that he has. Now I know they all have arcs, but we've been with him since '96. And if you think about, he has an arc in each film to where that character grows, and the choices that Kevin Williamson and Aaron Kruger and now the Radio Silence or James Vanderbilt co-wrote this, I think, by the way, who I think most notably wrote Zodiac, which was great.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think a couple people worked on the screenplay, but his name I think is on there. But anyway, so you get Dewey, you get the best character development throughout the entire Scream saga with David Arquette. And
you really do, yeah, because like I mentioned before, Neves and Courtney's character arcs just hit peaks and valleys, it seems like, all throughout the franchise.
But really, the Dewey, now 3 is a little wonky all the way around because I think what really they messed up, what I think the most kind of not criminal but unfortunate thing is they just kind of got the characters wrong a little bit in 3 because to an extent, but David Arquette, it's great. So I do like where he ends up in the new movie. Oh, well, you know, I like where his arc ends up.
Right.
And I really like her. I'm sorry, her name defeats me. She plays Thaisa in Yellow Jackets, and she is Randy Meek's niece in this. And I should have got her name, but she does the whole bit where she's watching her own uncle in Stab on the couch as he in universe is watching Jamie Lee Curtis, and everyone is shouting behind you and no one's looking behind you. Right. That was really cool. I thought her and the guy that played her brother both were the kid that's Cuba Gooding Jr.'s son. They were both really good. Yeah, I don't really have any problems with necessarily any of them. I don't really think Amber is necessarily my favorite in terms of just the way they wrote her.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't like that the Mindy girl with the pink hair. I didn't necessarily feel like her character added that much necessarily, but I haven't seen it again. I would have better feelings about who. Oh, you know who it was great though, and I just love seeing because I don't see her enough. Is Marley Shelton. Is Deputy Judy Hicks in the 4th one because everybody remembers that exchange about her lemon squares tasting like ass in Scream 4 between her and Courtney Cox. She was Deputy Judy in Scream 4, and now she has replaced Dewey as sheriff of Woodsboro in the new one. And it's very cool to see her do that because her son, played by Dylan Minnette, is a character. And so you've got
and I liked his part in this too. Even
that's my favorite kill scene in the movie. That's my favorite part of the whole movie.
That's how meta the whole movie got, was really with him in the kitchen, right?
That's my favorite part. The whole sequence where
even when the score intensifies when he opens up that refrigerator door, that was probably when I laughed at the most.
I did too. Yeah, I thought everything about that whole sequence was funny and nail biting, and you get all the quips with Roger Jackson and Marley Shelton. And I loved her in Planet Terror back in the day too. I still have my room morgue that had her on the cover. They had a couple of different ones. They had a Rose McGowan one that had her on that one, and I just thought she was outstanding in that. And she's great in this. And I hadn't mentioned her, so I'm glad that you asked me that because, her as Deputy Judy. Because remember how he says Judy too? He's like, Judy. That's all really great. She's great. It was cool to see her back as well. So, and another thing, these legacy sequels. 4 films may seem like a daunting task to some people that haven't seen any of them. Just go see this one then.
Yeah, because you really don't have to. They throw you in pretty much.
That's the secret with the Legacy sequel. That's the secret too. Is that's one of the aspects of it that is like a remake. In that, no, just come see our movie. You know, if you don't want to.
Even the sequence in the hospital bed, right? Like Zach Crane's catching up on all this stuff for you. What happened before?
Exactly. Trust me. There will be no man, woman, or child left behind. You will get there. If you want to watch the 4 movies, do it for sure because they're awesome. But if it seems daunting, just go see the new one while it's still in theaters and go back and watch those some other time.
All right. Well, this has been Reviews from Hell, episode 1.
Woo!
I hope you all enjoyed it.
Check it out. See you, buddy.